My name's Toby Beresford. I'm here, Helen Clark, and we're talking about the United Nations and social media. Helen, I'm sure you're aware, is a 3-time Prime Minister of New Zealand and a 2-term UNDP administrator. So she is not just a rock star on social media, she's a rock star in real life as well. And when we set up the United Nations Social 500, she kind of led the whole group for nearly 2 years. And with a kind of a fan base of around 170,000 Twitter followers, she's certainly been one of the people who can get social media. And it's really a delight to have a chance to chat with you, Helen, and get to find out a little bit more about your thinking. What do you love about the UN?
Well, if we didn't have it, we'd have to invent it. It had a predecessor, the League of Nations, which couldn't prevent the outbreak of another world war. From 1945 on, we haven't had another world war. I think that the UN has some issues into how it needs to act to be more effective with the conflicts of today. But hey, if we didn't have it, we would be bereft. So we have to have it. We have to make it better. We have to have it external facing. And social media, of course, is very much part of that.
What do you see the benefits of sort of virtual groups like the UN Social 500?
I thought UN Social Media 500 was great, and it got a lot of healthy competition going. I saw some of the people in UNDP who might have gone completely ignored without social media really worked very hard to do well on that index.
So how can social media help the UN achieve its goals and be a better organisation?
If social media is used effectively, it will communicate the ideals and the ideas and what the UN is doing to wide audiences. But here's the rub. People do either need to have an instinct for communication or be taught a lot of skills. And what I find following a lot of social media accounts is so often a tweet is not self-explanatory. It's either an impenetrable jargon or it assumes a lot of knowledge. That isn't going to cut it. People need clear, to-the-point messaging, and it should say something, not just be a set of bland cliches.
And so if you were to sort of think of examples where you've seen social media used well within the UN, can you think of specific kind of campaigns or specific tweets that you've seen where it worked well?
Well, I think when the whole UN team gets in behind a campaign, that's very effective. We've just seen, for example, several weeks of activism around combating violence against women. And there's a sort of orange branding and a, hashtag unite. I think that's been quite effective. Now, in my time there, often the social media teams would coordinate across something. If I was doing a Twitter chat, others would get in behind it. If another principal was doing a Twitter chat, we'd get in behind theirs. So I think the key thing is to mobilise across the system, get the hashtags going, and get a bit of excitement about a campaign. That works well.
There's a group of staff together, so like what you might call an employee advocacy program. How do you see that fit into sort of the way in which the United Nations communicates and promotes its kind of values?
Well, I'm all for empowering staff to use social media. And I have to say, in all the years of doing it and leading the organisation, I saw very few ill-judged tweets, right? I think that you should encourage staff to express what they're on about. And I see fantastic messaging from people across climate change and anti-corruption, gender equality, you name it. And it also puts a face to an organisation which can be faceless. People think the UN, and frankly, the person on the street thinks big bureaucracy, blah, blah, blah. That's true. But in that bureaucracy are people out there doing incredible things, particularly in the development and the humanitarian spheres. And they have things to say. So I'm all for encouraging them to say them and put the human face on the organisation.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And do you see them as reaching different audiences, say, for example, that the overall UN, the sort of the official channels might reach?
Oh, definitely. Look, what do the official channels reach? You see very little about the UN on mainstream media, in print media, which is itself an endangered species, or on TV or radio. So really social media enables people in the organisation and the organisations themselves to get out to a public which is interested. Now, that may be a bubble, but the idea is always to expand the bubble. And I think the advantage of having people at every level and around the world tweeting is that they will build up domestic audiences as well. If you're tweeting as the resident representative in Burkina Faso, you will reach people there that my tweets may never reach. And you can also do it multilingually. So I see our staff tweeting in all the official languages of the UN.
Is there a role for social media within the whole sort of diplomacy sphere?
Yes, and I think that's where it is currently underused by the UN. I think the public would like to know a bit more about the messaging. So often what you'll see from very senior officials is, I met X today, and there's the photo. Well, what did you talk about? Did he come away hopeful, depressed? I think people would like to know a bit more. I think for those who are kind of interested in doing this, I say there are great examples out there of diplomats doing it.
A sort of question about being a civil servant, a neutral civil servant, an international civil servant, and therefore neutral. Is that something you've kind of thought through and found a way to are there any sort of sensible lines that we should be taking?
I think, of course, you have to be politically neutral, but you can't be values neutral because the UN is founded with a charter that is strong on values. So as long as you anchor your social media, in fact, your general media, on those values, which are good values for peace and for development and for human rights, you really can't go wrong.
What do you think the best path is to strengthen UN social media within the UN?
Well, I think it is about empowering the many thousands of people who work for the UN to use the medium well, and that's going to require a lot of coaching. For example, there should be no meeting of leaders in an organisation that doesn't have social media clinics on the side. We used to do that with the very occasional UNDP global meeting that we did. It should be done at the regional meetings. All these big programs, UNICEF, World Food Programme, UNFPA, Department of Political Affairs, they're bringing their top people together from around the world semi-regularly. So really use these opportunities to coach people. And I do think something like Social Media 500 is great because it does promote healthy competition. Definitely people need to be coached because it doesn't come naturally to everybody.
So you've now left the UN. So how would you like to encourage those who are behind? What do you want to say to each person who's there?
My message would be that the work that every single person is doing is incredibly important. So please let the world in on the secret. Don't keep it to yourself. Often the communications is quite sort of introverted. Get it out there. Express it in layperson's language. Make it interesting. Show that the UN is making a difference.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Helen. Thank you for taking the time to have this interview today. I really appreciated your time.